are things that have been discussed for many, many years. From an economist's point of view, the most important thing they need to get right is the rebalancing, and that is to increase the household consumption share of GDP, which is at astonishingly low levels. They've been talking about that for 5 years, and it's gone in the wrong direction. It's easy to increase domestic demand by simply increasing investment. And the problem, though, is that for many years, investment levels have been so high that many of us, especially me, are worried that much of this investment is not economically viable and is simply going to result in a buildup of debt. And I think there's a growing consensus within policymaking circles that this indeed is the case. So that avenue for increasing domestic demand is pretty constrained. They'll keep using it, but they don't want to because we're wasting a huge amount of money. The golden way to increase domestic demand once more boils down to increasing household consumption. But to increase household consumption, you pretty much have to abandon the whole growth model that was so successful for the last 10 to 20 years, which is why it's so difficult. So I'm skeptical. I think it's going to be hard to increase domestic demand in the next 3 to 4 years, except the wrong way, by boosting investment.
Well, it's time for a short break. When we come back, is Europe turning its back on multiculturalism? Coming up, we'll ask that question on a visit to ethnically diverse East London. Plus, not quite as fast as a speeding bullet, but fast enough. Japan rolls out the latest version of its most famous train. More on that. Stay with us. You can see this long area of cloud across southern parts of the state. It is making its way a little further northwards, but some very big downpours to come here over the next 24 to 48 hours. It's pushing to the north. But some really heavy rain across a good part of Queensland into Northern Territory. To the south, that's where we've got high pressure, so it's settled here, it's fine and it's dry. Not too bad too into Western Australia, but a discrete line of showers just along the border there. At the eastern side of Western Australia could see some rather wet weather, and we'll see that gradually making its way a little further eastwards. It's going to be hot for Adelaide though, temperatures here getting up to 37 Celsius. Push up into Southeast Asia, and the main thrust for very heavy showers continues to be across Indonesia. Of Sumatra, a scattering of showers elsewhere, but really not too bad. Plenty of sunshine to come. Plenty of sunshine to come too across much of India. Largely clear skies here. We have got some lively showers very close to Sri Lanka, but the wetter weather, the more unsettled weather will continue across the higher ground. We have got more snow making its way out of Afghanistan into the foothills of the Himalayas, but fine and dry for New Delhi at 23 degrees.
From local traders to international finance, it's commerce that makes the world go round. For global companies and developing markets, communication is the currency, and information is the most valuable commodity. Counting the cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
The relocation of the Ahmadiyya has magnified the issue of religious intolerance in Indonesia. Is this inevitable in a multicultural society? And is the government turning a blind eye? 101 East at this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. You're watching Al Jazeera. The latest from the conflict in Libya. A surgeon in the city of AlJazeera has told us that rebel fighters have repelled an attack by forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi, but he says there have been up to 200 casualties after several hours of heavy fighting. It's just 50 kilometers west of the capital, Tripoli. Anti-government fighters say all is quiet in the town of Ras Lanuf after they won control on Friday. The oil port is situated between Tripoli and Benghazi. In Tripoli itself, tear gas and rubber bullets were used to break up an anti-Gaddafi protest after Friday prayers, but a rally by the leader's supporters went on all afternoon. Well, Well, Libya relies heavily on imports, and food distribution is becoming a serious problem. As Tim Friend reports, Gaddafi's forces have been accused of withholding food from rebel-held areas.
Not guns or missiles, but food. And in a protracted conflict in Libya, it could determine the outcome more crucially than any conventional weapon. Here in rebel-held AlJazeera, the baker, Agu Fakri, reveals that the use of food as a weapon by Gaddafi supporters has already begun.
Obviously, there is no stock of flour left. We had a small quantity coming from Tripoli, but it was taken back. We saw it on TV being brought as far as Sirte. We saw that the leader said the flour could come to the east, and then the flour was turned back by those highway bandits of his.
The World Food Programme is calling for urgent and safe access to Libya after a ship carrying vital food aid was unable to dock at the port city of Benghazi on the Mediterranean coast due to security concerns. The WFP has launched an emergency operation costing more than $39 million to provide much-needed food aid for Libyans inside the country and those who fled into neighbouring Tunisia and Egypt.
We were getting reports from those crossing the border into Tunisia just earlier this week about food being used as a potential weapon. We heard that some of Gaddafi's supporters were trying to deny some of the rebels food in certain areas. I mean, if they see any food trucks coming in, they may be able to stop them. And this is the last thing we want to see, of course, because food should be available to everybody.
Libya relies on food imports. A staggering 90% of all food supplies come from abroad. Many foreign workers are employed in farming and food production, but with migrants fleeing in their thousands, food supplies are suffering. But it's not only food. In 2000, more than a quarter of the population did not have access to safe drinking water. Global food prices have already reached new highs this year and could suffer the impact of further oil price spikes amid turmoil in Libya and the Middle East. Skyrocketing food prices were among the triggers for protests in Egypt and Tunisia. And once again, they're playing a central role in revolution. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera.
A man accused of a mass shooting in the U.S. state of Arizona could now be executed. Prosecutors in Phoenix have expanded their indictments against Jared Loughner. This will start a review to determine if he should be executed. The 22-year-old was already charged with the attempted murder of U.S. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords and the murders of 5 other people. Nepal's former Prime Minister Krishna Prasad Bhattacharya has died. He was 87. Bhattacharya served as Prime Minister of the Himalayan nation twice after leading a popular movement to restore multi-party democracy in 1990 and again 9 years later. Bhattacharya will be cremated on Sunday. Nepal's Maoist party has agreed to join a coalition government, ending a months-long deadlock. On Friday, the Prime Minister appointed 4 Maoists to his cabinet. Nepal is still struggling to recover from a decade-long civil war between the Maoists and the state that ended 5 years ago. Sabina Shrestha reports from Kathmandu.
Prabha Kharka lost her husband 5 years ago in Nepal's last revolution.
At that time, everyone was protesting. My husband also joined. He used to say that we have to protest for the country, for the people and for freedom.
Pradyumna Kharka was shot dead by security forces on the 20th of April 2006. He's remembered as a martyr.